Good morning, everybody. Welcome to October 1st. Holy cow, it is Morning Coffee Review. I am Jason Artley, joined here with Michael Chave, and we're here to talk about a whole bunch of different things. We've got an interesting topic today, but first, it's October. Holy cow, the calendar is flying by. Michael and I were chatting earlier about it's going to be January before we know it, but anywho, let's enjoy what fall we have left. How many pumpkin spice lattes have you had so far this year, Michael?
I haven't had any actually. I've been sticking true and tried to the good old black Americano. That's my go-to, and I haven't varied from it. And I don't even think, Courtney stopped drinking coffee too, so I haven't had any. You?
None. No pumpkin spice lattes in my world, but I get a whiff of my wife's every now and then, and it's like, okay, there's a seasonal scent, memory trigger there. But it's
In
pretty
the
fun.
air.
Yep. So what else you got going on in your world?
Yeah, so we're going to be going to AU coming up here in 2 weeks. So if you are going to AU, feel free to stop by the booth or also join. Well, I think my class is full. Myself and Matt Lynn are going to be teaching. So I think that. But if not, come join us. We'll be at the booth days. So you can feel free to come by and say hi to Jason and myself. And then also we may be postponing that one just because it's going to be early. So why is this read AI in here? Sorry, it keeps bothering me. I'm going to remove this read AI. So we'll be there. Feel free to meet us there, have a chat with us. And then also for that day, we're probably not going to be doing a episode that day because we'll be up early, going to our booth, and then also having long days those days for AU. So meet us there. If you're going to be there, we'll have a recap on that. But excited because Jason and I were just talking about it, how quickly these end of months go by over. It's just quick. There's so much going on here, but excited. So today what we're going to be talking specifically about is some CAD workflows that you could utilize for review. We know it's not built for CAD, but funny enough, they talked about that at Bluebeam Live now that I'm thinking about it. So I think they're kind of just trying to make it as user-friendly as possible and kind of encourage that type of workflows as well, right? It's not going to give you the full type of workflow that you would utilize from like a CAD perspective, but you're still able to do a lot of those things within Revu. What do you think?
Today's episode is titled, Can Revu Do BIM? And it's a loaded question, right? Because it keeps coming up as in like, oh, your BIM software, what, blah, 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 blah. And I think that we need to dive in deeper because coming from the civil side, BIM is still a mysterious thing. And I believe parts of Revu can do BIM, but let's find out more. So in your world, coming from the BIM heavy side, what is BIM?
So when you think of BIM, BIM's a term, building information modeling systems, right? So basically, and I think it gets used inconsistently from a term perspective. That is a process, I guess you would say, right? And part of that process, you have tools that complete this building information modeling process. So holistically, if you think of BIM, I'm thinking of more of a process, and part of that process could be utilizing Revit to get plan sets, right? Or communication tools that you're using like ACC, or utilizing Bluebeam to coordinate that, right? So I think it always gets misconception, especially from like a Revit perspective, that, Revit is BIM or BIM is Revit, that type of process. I think it's just ingrained in who we are and kind of that process, but it's an overarching process, what is titled as BIM, right? So you can think of that as this is what we're trying to create, and in that process, what are some of the solutions that we utilize to gain a full, complete process of BIM? Does that make sense?
Somewhat. Normally what I've been saying, is that when you say building information modeling, most brains go to buildings, hospitals, schools, structures, whatever. A building is a verb, right? Whatever you can build is what that is. So if you're building a road or a bridge or a toaster, technically you could BIM that, right? Every component that goes into those has information, and we're going to model that and include that information as part of that model. So I'm not just drawing a structural beam. I'm drawing a model or I'm modeling a structural beam that if I clicked on it, gives me information on thickness, manufacturer, installed by date, contractor, expected lifespan, all that other stuff, perhaps. That's how I see it.
And metadata within that information, right?
And metadata is sort of what brings us to Bluebeam. Bluebeam can do okay with metadata. Okay, right? It can be one of those things. It's like GIS, says Brian Haley. Yeah. I mean, geographic information system. I have a location. I have information about it. I want to sort of include that with my system, but it's not necessarily a model until it is.
So let's talk about what are some of the best tools we think that provide the most information. So definitely Revit. I would also, so I guess we're going to be talking about like embedded information, and I would quantify that as metadata associated to something, kind of like a barcode that's associated to like chips at a store that then pull up an item number for that, right? Embedded data. But I think you don't want to just have it that simplistic either. You want to have like the ingredients, the type of additives that were added into it. Like, you want a deeper scale into what that is, just to kind of make it more simplistic from like a conversation level. So then when you broaden that, I think Revit completes that. I would also almost say, what are some of the other solutions that you would integrate? I would almost quantify Inventor because you do build material from that perspective as well and associate it to like an assembly. You can also quantify elemental data with like spec sheets from like a tandem level, but that would be almost like a deliverable of BIM, right? It's like you're delivering something to an owner. I would probably do that via tandem. What else? You can use a model within Revu to get data through the markups lists, but that would be a 3D PDF, so that's a PDF version. You can also use another tool, which would be Autodesk Construction Cloud, which would be leveraging some of that building information modeling system in that system itself, right? But you can quantify the elements. That's more of a broader level because you'd be using the model to quantify elements that are in there, but not get metadata associated to, like you were saying, properties of that element in depth, right? I can see the element ID. I'm thinking of model coordination because that's what I'm teaching on the AU. But you can get elemental data from like a selection within docs and create issues. So that's part of it. Am I going too broad?
No, not at all. I mean, it's one of those things where still, even though this thought has been around for years, that'd be interesting. Ask ChatGPT, when did who started BIM, and when did that sort of buzzword become a thing? But as long as it's been out, and I want to say at least 20 years, right? There's still not a defined, this is what it is. Like CAD, we sort of figured that out pretty quick,
I think Matt made a post on that the other day too, about like using the word and term BIM.
Interesting.
Did you? No, I'll do it. Hold on.
Did I do anything on LinkedIn today? No, I'm slacking. I was too.
It wasn't today, but it was in the past. Let me look up on our friendly device.
Yeah. But it's a loaded topic, right? And we can get in, we can talk about 3D PDFs and sort of the embedded metadata today, but it's still, that makes that model not live. And isn't BIM part of a live model?
Attributed to Charles M. Eastonman, a professor at Georgia Institute of Technology. He was one of the pioneers in developing the concepts and early systems that led to what we now call BIM. His research in the 1970s and 1980s laid the foundation for the modern use of BIM in architecture, engineering, and construction. The actual term building information modeling was popularized in the 1990s and early 2000s by a software company like Autodesk, which promoted the idea of using BIM to create and manage digital representations of buildings. What else do you want to ask?
See, now that puts it back to buildings being the BIM and being a noun. See, and I still think it's a verb.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the civil side of me, because like a bridge is something that you built, something that I would want to access information from, right?
Do you want me to ask if building's a noun or a verb?
Yes. You're talking to AI.
On my phone. Yes.
Okay. Bridge can be a verb too. Oh, we're getting into things now.
So building can function as both a noun and a verb depending on the context. Well, come on. I asked you in the context of BIM.
And bridge is also part of ACC. So now we're going full circle, kind of. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. For my auto civil friends, you probably know Chris Fugit. He was at the Esri conference, and he was passing around a notebook saying, "What is BIM?" and asking all these different people. I'd like to see the final results. It's too early for that, Brian. You're going too deep, bud. But hey, side note. So before I'm interrupting you, it's the first Tuesday of a new month. That means it is officially Civil Chat Day for those who celebrate. So Brian, if you want to drop a link in the chat, probably see you over there later. Michael, what did AI say about what we're talking about?
Yes. So in the context of building information modeling, the B stands for building as a noun. It refers to the physical structure, the building itself, rather than the act of constructing it. BIM is focused on creating digital representations of physical and functional aspects of buildings. See, I love this because I'm learning more new things today. But yeah, so build BIM from the perspective of AI, which searches the internet and gathers its information from what I'm using. Yes, OpenAI, so ChatGPT, on my phone. Make that noted. And BIM is more focused on creating digital representations of physical buildings and is seen as a noun. So back to my first statement that the BIM term being a deliverable of this model, there are tools in your toolkit that you can use to accomplish that, right? Revit being one of them that hosts a ton of information by element and project data. And again, it's being a tool utilized to accomplish this term that we're also use so frequently.
So apparently my soapbox has been dismantled. BIM is a noun and not a verb. So you can just keep that over on your building side then and leave us civil folks out of it.
Well, yours is part of the process, right? So that doesn't mean that you're not part of the process. Part of the process of building a building would be what?
Getting access to it and piping it full of utilities, making room for it on the earth.
Exactly. Yeah. So which still comes back full circle that Civil 3D still imports from a topo surface level that we need to itemize within Revit from like a site development perspective back into there. And that doesn't mean that Civil 3D isn't part of that process, right? When I would even antiquate Civil 3D as being part of that process, and antiquate's probably not the right word, and that's typically where people, correct me, but we all understand where I'm going. That's still part of the process, right? From data, especially what you can do within Civil 3D. I'm trying to remember back in my education days, the amount of data that you're pulling into it, especially from like a piping from like, I'm thinking sewer, manholes, drainage, right? That you can do and utilize in it. It's still a powerful tool and you can get data from that, right?
Yeah, but Civil 3D isn't as robust as good old Revit when it comes to that stuff. But it's getting better. Agreed. Property sets and all that. And Keith, you put SIM in the chat. Civil information modeling, or SIM, it never really took off. They tried. CTC Software that we partner with, has SIM tools for Civil 3D, which are pretty amazing. But there aren't a lot of references to SIM in the industry that I've found. Can my civil friends confirm nor deny that? But yeah, it's an interesting thing, right? The concept is solid. The execution is a mess.
Yeah, and I would agree. Like I was talking about you earlier, Matt. I don't think you were in here. That you made a post, but BIM equals Revit. I think it's just BIM is a term, and I agree that people most frequently in our industry say that Revit is BIM and vice versa. And I said that at the beginning, and that's not the case, right? BIM is a process, and what tools do you use to accomplish this process? And we kind of unearthed this because I didn't even know who created it, which was great. Like that process being built in the 1970s, 1980s, and then adopted by Autodesk, which then the Autodesk marketing machine it is, and pushing machine, kind of built it into the repertoire of it being like this building information modeling. What else should we ask?
Is there ask it if there's a sim? What is sim? And it's probably going to say, something else ridiculous. But because you would think,
yes, sim stands for civil information modeling, city information modeling.
Okay, city information modeling. Now we're getting back to GIS.
So
it's acronym soup today.
Yeah, both concepts leverage similar technologies to BIM, but are applied to broader contexts beyond the individual building.
Okay, so David's got a new challenge. What about facility information modeling? Does facility information modeling exist? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's recalled to as FM though, right? So then that would mean that like Tandem and things would be part of FM. Yep, facility information modeling, similar to BIM, focuses on the management and operations of facilities over the life cycle. So again, I guess we're using all of these acronyms with the IM added into it. Who provides solutions to deliver this? I guess we need to understand, is this a deliverable? Like these terms, are we delivering this, or is this the standard that you're trying to accomplish when creating something?
That's a great question. Is this something that we're all striving for, or is that something that's expected of us?
Yeah, that I think it should be the question we're looking at. Like, is this what's being expected from us from a client? Is this being what's expected from us from an industry? Like, who's expecting us to create this BIM, FM, CIM,
okay.
FIM?
So David says it depends on what your contract says. Yes, absolutely, because there should be a different cost involved. But Ryan says it should be a standard, but not all BIM projects are sent to the client. Because obviously, the client usually says, hey, I want to build a shopping mall. And you say, okay, give me $20 and I'm going to create a set of construction documents for you. And those construction documents, which is going to tie us back here into Bluebeam in a minute, are a roll of paper. Here you go. Here's your roll of paper. This has been approved by the city. You can take these and go pay somebody to build these. I approve them. My stamp is on them. Right? So that roll of paper is what they paid that $20 for. The roll of paper is not BIM.
And I think where BIM will come into play from our side will be things like Tandem, which then make it easier to turn that key into like an FIM solution from a facility information modeling. So that way you're getting all of the documentation tied into one system along with your model geometry from representation of what that is. So I think as you start seeing things roll out from a software solution providing, you'll get your deliverable more accomplished to these terms if that's what the client's requesting, right? Because I think at the end of the day, we're all working for our clients, we hope. And regardless of what side of the street you are on this side, from a discipline perspective, our ultimate goal should be to provide the client what they requested. And also, I think, educate them on what can be delivered, right? Because some clients may not know what's out there. And I think it's also our industry educating back this is what you can accomplish with these tools.
So you mentioned Tandem, and Tandem's going to tie us into another buzzword of digital twins, right?
Correct.
And that's somewhat taking one step beyond BIM and to getting us closer to FM, right? Oh
Yep.
man, I'm gonna get lost so quick.
Well, Tandem is a digital twin tool. I just don't like to use the digital twin terms because I feel like a lot of the industry has mistaken that from like because that's what it was kind of broadcast at the beginning, which is a scan to like model, right? Digital twin from that perspective, not actually an FM solution, which is what I would quantify as a digital twin.
Oh boy, getting deep now. I think there's an opportunity. Okay, so us in the design space, should we be considering FM down the road when we start doing the napkin sketch of our building layout?
Yes, and I think if you want to provide a better deliverable to a client, a tool like an FM deliverable can be accomplished easily, and I think it's a better deliverable to the client, which would be called a digital twin, right? Regardless, digital twin doesn't have to derive from an existing building already being built, and that's typically what digital twin was quantified as before. But actually quantified as a building deliverable that is being built to a new build as a digital twin handover.
So we're replacing what we've traditionally called the as-built, where you built it, here you go, here's where it stands, you're done, right? Here's the elevation, here's your finished floor elevation, here's your whatever. But now we're taking that beyond. And that's where I like to see things, with Tandem or ArcGIS Indoors or some of these other tools that are popping up that make things more available, right? And I've seen some really cool models, especially of like airports. Airports are getting in there pretty quick, right? With being able to leverage this technology pretty quick.
I think all larger facilities, I mean, another great area of market for folks that are out there would be like semiconductor plants.
Yeah.
Data centers. Analyzing all of our equipment that's in there through a tool.
Yeah, and being that forward thinking about it. So
Yeah.
Matt put in the chat, it's up to the end user. If they don't want to leverage that technology, then they don't have to pursue it. But if you have most of the pieces, wouldn't you want to consider that? Or at least do the upsell?
Or see it. I mean, because at the end of the day, I don't want to say this. There's a client out there that wants the job done. Typically, there's multiple people bidding on it. What sets you apart? That's just more of the like competing person in me of like, I want to win this project. What sets me apart from Jason Artley?
Yeah.
I mean, there's multiple things. Yeah. There's multiple things, right? I mean, that of course, you as the principal architect on a project, we'll just use that as the instance because that's typically who's bidding on the project. Like there's their work that they've done in the past that quantify that value to what they're presenting. But then also another added value could be what you're delivering.
Yeah.
Not just the building, because the building's the ultimate deliverable, right?
Right.
Don't get me wrong there. But
and David hit it on the head, that value add. You're going to get all this plus we'll throw in the movie channels for free. Yeah, there you go. So Ryan put up to a certain point, it makes sense, right? It's not going to work if you try to update it every time you change a light bulb or light, but having the model of manufacturing line makes sense, right? Yep. And that's where I've seen digital twin models where, it's tied into sensors. So we're seeing more of that sensor-driven stuff, especially with the Autodesk and water solutions too. Water quality, air quality, electrical systems check, whatever, and then, hey, there's a fault here in your system. Somebody's watching on the dashboard. Well, you can click on that and it will show you, oh, this is a Johnson Controls model 5816. Here's the warranty information. Here's the circuit guide. Have all that in one click tied to the operations dashboard. Now, all that was thought of and considered, hopefully, during the design phase. They knew that they were going to need an AC unit or whatever that was as they were laying that out. And like, well, how about we start thinking about this now? Because eventually I'm going to need to access that information. Right?
Yep. No, exactly. And then on that note, so we don't get kind of too detoured, let's jump in and see what Revu can provide to us from an IM's solution perspective. I'm just going to use the IM of the terms because you can supplement. Well, because with Civil 3, were we able to figure out how to print out Civil 3D PDFs? Did you ever figure out a workflow?
My last experiment failed terribly.
Okay. So I already have some pre-created things, and maybe we take a look at ACC too. So kind of adding more value to this. Other solutions as well, but we'll look at Revu, and then because I forget in ACC if you can see like the embed data, because I'm not typically I'm looking at like issues and things in there, but I'm not looking at specific elements. Like, am I trying to get data? Because that would be another great, and that is like also a tool for that, because all of your information should be stored in one area, right? That's just a tool that accomplishes that. And that also I've seen a steady uptick in users providing that as a gateway access point to some more legal stuff. You should probably always read those terms. Yeah. But let's go to, I think I have some 3D PDFs somewhere. So we'll go over to here. I'm just getting ready to open up a 3D PDF here.
I'm firing up my Revu to read that little message that popped up on yours and put a screenshot somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't get one.
Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm not compliant.
Ooh. Interesting.
Maybe it's because I go to different IP addresses and you probably don't.
Yeah, I do. Because I go VPN and not VPN.
Does a VPN change your IP address if your internet is your original location of it? Any network advisors in here? Because I go to the office and work off the office internet. You work off the same internet, but you're going in through a VPN portal. Does that change your IP address or not?
I don't know. That's beyond me. I would imagine yes.
Yeah, me too, but I don't know. Okay, so coming back into here, you can accomplish this. By the way, the update, and I did an update, as Mr. Jason Artley said. How long do you think it's going to take for me to update?
10 minutes, because you got to shut down everything. So, like, go at lunch.
No, how long? When do you think I'm going to update?
Oh, it's going to take probably Christmas break.
Probably.
But dark mode is so good. I've got dark mode set up to look like a blueprint, so dark blue background. It's really cool.
So what people were asking, which I thought would have been cool, like if you had the black background on the PDF and then Halloween's coming up and you had orange. So people were asking at Bluebeam Live if you can change the line weight color, but you can't. Nope.
It just inverts the lines, but it changes the actual paper background.
Yep. So basically, this was new, so 2025. So I will show everyone this part to export out a 3D PDF. But what information, so if we're taking into context building, and then you have information out of that BIM term, and I thought we were going to go the route of like, can we design floor plans in Revu? And yes, you can. So I guess we'll that first original comment I made. I didn't really realize where we were going with this, and thanks Early for correcting me. Like the information can we get out of a PDF? Because that's what Review primarily works off. A PDF as a PDF as a PDF is what they always say. Yes, so you do have the data here. So there is built-in information from Revit that you can host or does get hosted in what's called the 3D model tree. So can I manage additional columns? So here, yeah, this is great because this is typically what's here. These are all the parameters that are, so my question originally was, this is not everything that you get from an element, just knowing how many parameters are associated to specific subcategories, which I didn't realize how many there were. Now you all realize how many there are here, but we have a tool for Spreadsheet Link that allows us to see all of this parameter data that's baked in that you can't traditionally see. Come back full circle, instead of over explaining things, yes, you can get all of this information that if maybe you pre-assign data to it from within Revit. So would you quantify a 3D PDF as part of this process tool that you would equate it to as BIM?
I would say no, because it's not live.
It
was live.
When did live become part of it?
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that, did we? Well, I mean, okay. Because if it's the digital twin part, then we can't add more information.
Well, digital twin is a deliverable, I feel like. No, I guess it's living and breathing. Evolving. Yep, yeah. You're right.
Stale BIM. Ooh, there's a good term there, David. Stale BIM.
So if we quantify BIM as an ultimate deliverable, we would say digital twin is also a deliverable. But as part of the process, what are we trying to accomplish by sending this out and quantifying the information with it?
Okay, I'll go further. Is there a spot in a project lifecycle where BIM stops and digital twin takes over? Or FM takes over?
Yeah, that's after project handover. Once the FM is essentially an owner's tool.
The owner tool. So here's the keys and here's the model. I'm out.
Yes. Well, yes. Traditionally, you would hope that you're out. And then it becomes a facility maintenance tool. And I think FM tools really are great for all sides of an ownership of a building, because it also comes to not it truly at its heart. I was even thinking about this from like a request perspective of janitorial services, because one of my friends is a VP at a janitorial services. And like that is also the same type of tool, right? Because they're going through and cleaning specific areas, and you can itemize within a tool within that and have full transparency as an owner from an operations standpoint, but then also knowing how many times this light bulb was replaced. Why are we using this manufacturer? Right? Like these are all things from an FM solution that you can quantify and see the building decay rate, I guess you would say, but then also like items within the building and what should we be using versus something else, and what is the lifespan of something like an operations standpoint.
Okay. So my brain went to a weird place. There's this new commercial shopping center close by that still has some vacancies. So they've already done, here's the rough framing of what can fit in this space. But the actual rest of the building and structures and systems are already in place. So in that case, if I had a scenario where, hey, I know that these spots, can be a hair salon, can be a grocery store, can be a whatever, as it changes around, does that restart the BIM process for that little area, or does that still fit in the FM that you're updating at that point?
I think you're updating it, but it's not part of FM. You're having the blend of both, right? Like updating and then reproducing and adding it into FM. Because FM should be a connection between what's modeled and what's delivered.
A bridge, perhaps.
Yep.
There we go.
But yeah, I mean, if you were looking at this, yeah, you just have to be aware that what was this sent at? And that's where I think it comes down to tools if you're trying to work. Because this is always a big issue, and people have this when I have this conversation with them about PDFs. And if this is part of your workflow, this is a great solution for that workflow. But if you want something live from the actual model, like Jason was saying earlier, I guess the next step would be something that is a centralized area where everyone's storing files, right? Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So on that note, we know what we can do from a 3D PDF, and how do you create it in Revu? Just use a construction one. There are tools now. So there's an add-in, and you can get it in Revit 2025 now for all those people asking. Whatever's in a 3D view, you can create a 3D PDF. So visually in a 3D view, you can create a 3D PDF. So you can isolate, select an element, or you can crop out things. Just what's visually in the view, in the 3D view, is what's going to be created as a 3D PDF. So 3D PDF, there is the U3D, and that's to attach it onto like a 2D PDF. There's also, you can export it as an ISO view too, to view it as on a PDF itself, meaning flat space 2D versus a 3D PDF. But if you want to create a 3D PDF, here's the add-in right here. Okay. I'm hoping you're monitoring the chat because I'm doing like two things at once.
Yeah, David had mentioned it depends on the level of the deliverable. Are we providing a shell of the building or every piece of trim and light switch? Right, which is fair. LOD. Do we want to throw in that acronym today?
Well, that's part of the BIM process, which needs to be established, right? What is the level of development? I don't know.
I don't know this project. What do you got going on here?
This is just the one Kyle created. You all have met Kyle, and Kyle will also be at AU, and we already said Matt will be there. So if you want to see the whole crew, we're only missing Kyle Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from here, and weren't we supposed to get PJ on? We only have 1 week left.
Yeah, I texted him about it, and he said he'd let me know, but we'll see.
He travels a lot. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I go and grab something like a wall, right, there's a properties perspective on the basic wall. So you do get everything that you would want from Revit. Perfect. So from like information process, from an element level, you do get everything that you would want from here. So I guess this accomplishes the live aspect that you were asking, and dispersing information to multiple users at once.
Interesting. Okay. Since I'm a Revit idiot, you have that basic wall, you have that information, and you're here in ACC. Can you add another column or parameter to that?
Data, no. Yeah. Be driven from your modeling environment.
Yeah.
But that would be interesting to have a bilateral information aspect from here into Revit.
Right? Because we're going to create
if I'm an owner,
here, so if we're going to trademark, we're going to dibs on this invention here. Because yeah, if I'm an operator and I'm looking at my Revit model, I'm like, this wall, I really wish I had the information or a column here or a form where I can enter in color. Is that Sherman-Williams paint or somebody else? Is there a spot in here for paint color?
Well, that would be part of your process of delivering it from a rendering aspect. And yes, there are rendering solutions that are live and do update from what the client wants as a paint color material value is what we'd quantify it as, that update back into the model.
But yeah, being able to add a column here in ACC, and that goes back to the Revit model, and now there's a new population for it. That would be cool.
So I don't think you'd be able to create a new parameter. But what would be great, and what your tinfoil hat idea was, and we won't call it tinfoil hat idea because you are going to trademark this, would be, can I update element data from ACC? The question's going to be, because that's just like exporting it out to Excel, which you can do the same thing. You're going to have parameters locked that shouldn't be updated because of its impact on the model, right? I.e. size. Would be a good example. But there could be a text-based parameter that you could update. And you as an owner may already know what you want to add here, and that could be a great way. And I already could see it being able to work because you have issues that can transcend between the ACC platform directly into Revit via the issues add-in. So it would probably just have to be some type of add-in that allows you to then modify. Well, I guess I'm getting too deep into the weeds of this idea, so I'm not going to.
Okay. What's that yellow dot there? Is that an issue?
Yeah.
Whoa, cool. David wants to know, do those data points show up in the 3D PDF? You mean the 3D modeling things that you see there? Or the issues? See, that's where that would be cool if ACC and Bluebeam Cloud become friends, where your issues from ACC and your issues from Bluebeam Cloud show up in the same platform. That way nothing gets missed regardless of what platform you're on.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat all
I was
that.
reading some of the comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
You missed it.
Do all those data points show up in your 3D PDF? I mean, so yeah, I mean, we talked about that a little bit earlier. All of the parameter-driven data does live here in your managed columns. So
there's a lot of it.
Yeah, and if there is data in that field, it'll populate here. Yes, I think that was your question.
There has to be data in that field for it to appear. It won't just show up blank.
The field shows up like foundation thickness. It's here.
Okay. That's crazy.
On a steel member. But again, it's just there's not a thickness there. It's because it's by the category, and the category has these built-in parameters in Revit that you can get. So like, yeah, that doesn't make sense from a foundation thickness perspective, but you can still have that parameter driven from a category level. But I think that this isn't part of the framing. I think it's just populating this field here because it's overall populating it. That doesn't make sense. So
interesting.
But going back, yes, there's in here you can have that same data if you're just clicking on things, and it's going to be a scroll heaven here. But yeah. So I'm trying to see. This doesn't really give me ladder horizontal bend. It doesn't really give me a lot of stuff though.
Good question from David. Are the elements of the 3D model tree exportable to CSV similar to how you can export a model markups list?
Yeah. So you can export these out, summary, export to CSV, desktop.
Yeah, but you can only get the CSV. You can't do the PDF.
Correct. Yeah, it only gives you this.
I wonder if it's just too much data. Interesting.
What's the show parts? Reset all parts. Oh, I guess if you move them. Because yeah, you can move things in here.
Right, which is also something that's interesting. Right, moving beams and moving things around in a 3D PDF that you can't necessarily do in a 2D PDF.
Correct. And you probably wouldn't want to do that in like ACC because then you'd be worried about some people will probably have the mentality that they want to update the model from somewhere. But the great part about it in review is that it doesn't update the model.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from here, you do have the same things. So as we talked about before, you do have the option to go through and have that data. So whatever you decided to put, you have all of that information here. So I guess this could be a great way to like look up, element IDs and search. I don't know if you ever needed to for something. Just a thought.
I mean, this would be super handy for quantifying everything, right? Because you know every single beam that's in there.
Which I agreed, and then we'd come back to this to the segmented data because there's also a quantity tool built into the ACC platform.
True.
So, but if let's just say this, if you were someone that wasn't part of this ACC platform and you wanted to get data, you could ask somebody to send you a 3D PDF and you could quantify what's existing in there for your quantity takeoffs versus having to go through and select these things from a 2D perspective and place a count. That would be easier. Like if I was doing casework, wink, wink, that would be great to see what they already had existing if they modeled anything.
Yeah, could be a good check for sure. Yeah, I would also like to know that, David. We should challenge them to see. I'm sure they've got a workflow that's 10 times beyond what we've been able to come up this early in the morning. But
what?
Like what David and Vince, or what Doug and Vince could do in Power Query with 3D model data as opposed to the markups list data that they're normally playing with.
Yeah, I mean, this would be more powerful, I would think, than you having to physically go through. I guess it is physically, right? Markup?
Yeah.
Like physically markup, virtually markup, digitally markup. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Versus digitally marking up a PDF 2D when you can quantify everything from here. And this is truly modeled, so you don't have to worry about, was this misplaced or was this actually an additional count that I placed? So I think this is probably even better.
Interesting. Yeah, that's, David, we're tying right back to how we started. It all depends on the quality of the model, right? Because our LOD, you know, if it's not set up for casework, you're not going to find anything.
I think this is great. The more transparency you have on how people model, the better we're all going to get.
Absolutely. Right. And I think that's sort of the related points to our conversation today is like, can Revu do BIM? Like parts of it, there are information that you can extract from models, right? We've extracted information from the model of the building to even go further, right? But that's a place in time. The 3D PDF is not live. It is stale BIM. That's a new term that I learned today. Thank you for that. But as a check, as a like, hey, getting ready for construction type of thing, or you know, where am I at so far with materials? It works pretty good for that. But it's all about the data and knowing where to start. Like, hey, I'm going to want, as you start going through this project, I'm going to want some information included with the model. So at various points, I can go extract information through 3D PDF or whatever else.
Yeah. And I do agree that unfortunately in our part of the industry, this comes from both disciplines that I know and I've seen. There are some folks out there that aren't using their tools in the correct manner that they could be using them in. And that's, I think there's a lot of issue with just, I think it's a bigger issue with, I think it's, I don't know, it comes down to trying to complete projects. I think so I think the way to fix it would be a deliverable not being a PDF. Like if that wasn't the deliverable to the city, I feel like there'd be a lot more uncovering of inconsistent modeling if models were part of a deliverable. So I guess there just needs to be an AI tool from like a delivery standpoint on checking models for cities. Because I think at the end of the day, why people model the way they do is they probably don't have time, majority of the time. This is what comes up. They don't have time to fix inconsistencies in how they're modeling and things that are being done in their design tools because ultimately they have a deliverable date. That deliverable date and delivery is a PDF. Now, if you changed that PDF delivery, because that's where a lot of the fudging happens, I just need to make it look and print the way it needs to print to submit. That's typically what it is. It just needs to print. We just need to have this consistent set that prints out. That's what's going out to the city. Doesn't matter what got us here. As long as it got us here, then we're good. So if we fix that delivery, I think it would uncover all this other mess of how we're creating that delivery, which would then create a better process for everyone else as a downstream effect.
Mm-hmm. And, Doug puts a good point. There's still a lot of cities working with PDF software that can't extract this data. But we are seeing a lot in California where California jurisdictions are requiring Bluebeam be used, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
food for thought.
Yeah, I'll let you read Matt's comment from his friend GPT.
Okay. Yes. So it is possible to integrate Internet of Things. I believe that's right. IoT devices with Bluebeam Revu, though would typically. So I don't understand what integrate Internet of Things. What is that? Though it would typically require custom development. Bluebeam Revu itself is primarily a PDF markup and collaborative tool used in the construction industry, but it does have APIs. So Internet of Things, I don't know what that is. Like, is that integration of live PDFs? Okay.
So we're throwing out another acronym, IoT, Internet of Things. So basically tying in sensors in smart cities and smart buildings and all that other stuff too through connections. Yeah.
So there's a way to integrate your connections into Bluebeam Revu, which again is going to be part of that platform of cloud sensors. Perfect. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Matt. Because I was confused. So you can integrate sensors into Bluebeam Revu. I think that will be great from a platform perspective of cloud, which hopefully at some point, you'll all be aware that we're going to have Go Canvas on here at some point as well. But that being integrated into the cloud platform, some of the form fields, I don't know what they're going to integrate it into there. For all of you that used that RFI punch list and submittal platform that was now archived, like how are they going to integrate some of, not all of, because Go Canvas is a separate product, into that cloud platform? How could you integrate? Because the APIs are going to be going into the cloud platform. How do we integrate that API of sensors into a dashboard? Because essentially that's what you'll be able to create. You know what I mean?
Yep. I've got some Esri dashboards that I've found on the internet of different like water quality and air quality and things like that. That's really, really cool. And being able to make that small scale for a building to know, like, are my temperatures consistent, water filter statuses, all those things that have sensors in that dashboard is going to make it easier for building managers and facility managers to have that clear picture.
So I think what would be interesting to do, and if anyone from a city is listening and like figuring out how you could do this, how do we accomplish a mandatory deliverable of some type of information model as a requirement, right?
Yeah, and I think that honestly, we're going to see more development in this arena in the next 10 years than we've seen in the past 30 years.
I agree.
Right? When it comes to how buildings are created. right? I think there's going to be another spike of innovation here that'll actually happen.
Yeah, because I think the hang up is the end result of a deliverable. Because if it doesn't come from the client as a deliverable to them as the owner, I guess that's where be the place to start to get quicker traction. Because from a code perspective and a submittal perspective, that may take a little bit longer to change. But like from a delivery perspective, a client, if you're a client or no clients that want to go through and build something, like requesting that as a deliverable specifically, so then you can accomplish some other items like an FM solution.
Interesting. So there was another chat about accessible PDFs. So I've never heard this, Brian. A PDF that's optimized to assist those with visual impairments get the information contained in the PDF. I would need to see this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the correct way to say it because we're trying to see things for folks with visual impairments, but I don't know. Oh, there we go.
I mean, this is a very interesting topic overall, and just kind of where BIM as a term falls into the industry. And I didn't realize there was 3 other terms. Yes, my question would be, what part of the what?
This accessible PDF thing doesn't work for construction documents. I mean, it's for reading text, sure. Text to speech, braille displays, like you can't braille an architectural set of plans, can you?
I don't know.
Yeah. So reports and stuff, sure. But text to speech, yeah. Bluebeam can't do that yet. But that's not really what it's for.
You can you can speak to text.
No, can't text to speech. You can't select a box and have it read to you. But talk about, yeah, can you read me a drainage report? I'd like to go to sleep for the next 8 hours. You know?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But since we labeled this as, does Revu do BIM?
Mm-hmm.
And
so what's the answer?
It does provide information on a model, but it doesn't allow you to add information to the model.
No. There's no custom column option for 3D PDFs.
Correct. So,
but you can mark up.
But that's not adding information into the model. It's restating it as a 2D view.
Okay.
But you can move things. So is that right? Like, would we quantify that as modifying?
I mean, even viewing as a section, right? You can section a PDF that you couldn't do if it was on paper.
True. So you do have the selection box here. So that is an option. Now, I guess it just comes down to, what are we trying to accomplish with this? But at the end of the day, we do get information that had to have been done elsewhere, which is the same for like an ACC product, docs. But you do get a CSV. I think that's a bonus. And you do get more information. So when I was in ACC, look at this column data here, right? Like even the rebar cover face. When I was in ACC, I didn't get any of that. So get some more on a 3D PDF. That's not live. I think that was a complaint.
Well, I think someone, if I scroll up on the chat, I think someone mentioned it perfectly. It's BIM Lite, right? It can do some. I will say my vote is it absolutely has a place in a BIM workflow.
Yep. And I would agree. As
There we go.
part of us establishing it at the beginning that it is a workflow.
Bingo. That being exactly part of it, right?
Yep.
We're going to start, before we even open up Revit for the first time, we're going to consider that this data is going to be consumed in Bluebeam through the use of a 3D PDF.
Yep.
That would absolutely make this part of that tool. So good conversation today. Thanks for everybody for joining us. That brings us to the bottom of the hour. We've got one more week, and then we're going to take a break for the 15th, as Michael and I will be at Autodesk University with Matt and Kyle Lee and Brian Haley and all sorts of fun people. So come on down to San Diego if you're down for things like that. And we will see you next week, Tuesday, same time, 8:30 Central. And take care out there.
Have a good one, everyone.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe and check out some of the other content on our channel.